There is a kind of wealth that cannot be counted, weighed, or stored in vaults. It does not shine in the marketplace, yet it quietly shapes every moment of a life. Those who walk the path of stillness come to understand that while material things may pass from hand to hand, there are certain inner treasures that must never be given away, not out of selfishness but out of wisdom. For when these are lost, one becomes poor in ways no coin can repair. First, one guards awareness. The mind, when scattered, becomes a servant to every passing thought, every noise, every desire. But when awareness is held gently and firmly, it becomes a lamp in darkness. To lend it away to distractions, to endless comparison, to restless craving is to wander without direction. The one who protects awareness walks with clarity even in confusion. Second, one does not lend inner peace. The world will often invite you into storms that are not yours. Harsh words, conflicts, and chaos will knock at the door of your heart. If you hand over your peace in response, you become entangled in suffering that multiplies. But if you remain steady, like a still lake untouched by wind, even the storm will eventually pass without leaving a mark. Third, one keeps hold of compassion. It is easy to withdraw kindness when faced with anger or betrayal. Yet compassion is not for others alone, it is a refuge for oneself. To lend it away to hatred or indifference is to close the very door that leads to freedom. The compassionate heart remains soft without becoming weak, open without becoming lost. Fourth, one does not give away integrity. Truthfulness and right action are the foundation upon which a peaceful life is built. When integrity is compromised for gain, approval, or fear, the mind becomes divided, and a divided mind cannot rest. To hold firmly to what is right, even when it is difficult, is to remain unshaken in a changing world. Fifth, one protects patience. Time tests all things. Without patience, even small obstacles feel unbearable. The hurried mind suffers not because the path is long, but because it resists the journey. Patience allows each step to unfold naturally. It teaches that growth cannot be forced, only nurtured. Sixth, one does not lend self-respect. To seek validation from others is to place your worth in uncertain hands. Praise and blame rise and fall like the tide. If you give away your sense of worth, you will rise and fall with them. But when self-respect is rooted within, it remains steady regardless of the voices around you. Seventh, one guards silence. Not all silence is empty, some silence is full of understanding. Words once spoken cannot be taken back, and careless speech often leads to regret. Silence, when held wisely, becomes a space where insight grows. To lend it away to noise and idle talk is to lose the depth it offers. Finally, one never gives away the direction of the heart. Many will offer paths, opinions, and judgments. If you follow each one, you will become lost in 1,000 directions. But when you listen deeply within, there is a quiet knowing that guides you. It does not shout, yet it is always present. To trust this inner compass is to walk your own path with confidence and peace. These are the treasures that cannot be borrowed, bought, or replaced. They must be cultivated, protected, and honored. The one who understands this may appear simple to the world, yet carries a richness beyond measure. And in that quiet richness there is a freedom that nothing can take away. Protect inner awareness. Do not allow your mind to be constantly scattered by distractions, desires, or external noise. Awareness is the foundation of clarity and wise living. Awareness is the first and most delicate treasure a person holds within. It is not something that can be seen or touched, yet it shapes how every moment of life is experienced. When awareness is clear, even simple things become meaningful, and ordinary moments carry depth. But when it is lent away to distractions, constant thinking, endless scrolling of thoughts, or chasing things that never truly satisfy, the mind becomes like a restless river, always moving but never settling. In that state, a person may still live but not truly see life as it is. To protect awareness means to remain present with what is real right now. It is the ability to notice thoughts without being carried away by them, to observe emotions without being controlled by them, and to recognize the difference between what is essential and what is merely noise. When awareness is strong, decisions become clearer, speech becomes more thoughtful, and actions become more aligned with wisdom rather than impulse. Life begins to slow down in a meaningful way, not because time changes, but because the mind is no longer rushing ahead or pulling backward into regret. Yet awareness is easily lost when lent to the outside world. Modern life constantly invites attention to move outward toward comparisons, opinions, worries, and desires that never end. Each time attention is given away without care, a little of inner clarity is lost. Over time, this creates confusion, fatigue, and a sense of being disconnected from oneself. A person may feel busy but not fulfilled, active but not centered. To hold awareness is not to reject the world, but to engage with it wisely. It is like carrying a lamp in a windy place. If the lamp is not protected, the flame will flicker and fade. But if it is guarded carefully, it continues to shine and guide the path. In the same way, awareness must be gently protected from the winds of distraction. There is also a deep freedom that comes from maintaining awareness. When a person is fully present, they are no longer trapped by unnecessary fears of the future or regrets of the past. The mind stops running in circles and begins to rest in what is real. In that rest, understanding grows naturally. Problems that once seemed heavy begin to appear smaller, not because they disappear, but because the mind becomes strong enough to face them clearly. Awareness also brings honesty with oneself. It reveals habits that were previously ignored and patterns that quietly shape behavior. This recognition is not always comfortable, but it is necessary for growth. Without awareness, a person may continue repeating the same mistakes without knowing why. With awareness, change becomes possible because the truth is no longer hidden. In daily life, protecting awareness can be simple. It can begin with noticing the breath, listening fully when someone speaks, or doing one task at a time without rushing into the next. These small acts slowly gather the scattered mind and bring it back home. Over time, this practice creates a steady presence that remains even in difficult situations. Ultimately, awareness is not just a mental skill, it is a way of living. It is the difference between drifting through life and truly experiencing it. When it is protected, everything else becomes clearer: thoughts, emotions, relationships, and decisions. And when it is not lent away so easily, a quiet strength begins to grow within, one that does not depend on external conditions but remains steady from within. Do not surrender. Inner peace. Peace should not depend on external situations or other people's behavior. Keeping inner calm prevents unnecessary suffering. Inner peace is one of the most fragile yet powerful qualities a person can hold. It is not something that is created by perfect circumstances, nor is it dependent on having everything go according to desire. Instead, it is a quiet state that exists beneath the surface of changing conditions. When it is present, even difficulties feel manageable. When it is lost, even small matters can feel overwhelming. This is why it is said that inner peace should never be lent out, because once it is given away, it often returns only after great effort. In daily life, there are countless moments that test this inner peace. A harsh word from another person, an unexpected problem, a delay in plans, or even a memory that resurfaces from the past can disturb the mind. In such moments, there is a natural tendency to react immediately. The mind wants to respond with anger, frustration, or worry. If this reaction is followed without awareness, inner peace is handed over to the very situation that caused the disturbance. The outer world then gains control over the inner world, and suffering begins to grow. But when a person understands the value of peace, they begin to respond differently. Instead of reacting instantly, there is a pause. In that pause, awareness appears. In awareness, the situation is seen more clearly. Often what seemed large and unbearable becomes smaller when viewed without emotional turbulence. This does not mean ignoring problems or pretending they do not exist. It means facing them without losing the calm center within. Inner peace is like still water. When the surface is undisturbed, it reflects everything clearly. But when it is shaken, nothing can be seen properly. In the same way, when the mind is calm, understanding becomes natural. Solutions arise without force. But when the mind is agitated, even simple decisions become confusing. This is why guarding peace is not weakness, but strength. There are also people and situations in life that try to pull a person away from their peace. Sometimes it is through conflict, sometimes through expectations, and sometimes through emotional pressure. If one is not careful, they begin to carry the emotions of others as their own. In doing so, their inner stability is slowly given away. A wise heart learns to recognize what belongs to them and what does not. Not every storm needs to be entered. Not every battle needs to be fought within. To protect peace is also to understand the nature of impermanence. All situations, whether pleasant or unpleasant, eventually change. Joy does not remain forever, and neither does sorrow. When this truth is understood deeply, the mind becomes less shaken by temporary conditions. It learns to stay steady even as life moves. Practicing this protection can begin in small ways. Choosing silence instead of unnecessary argument, breathing calmly before responding, stepping back from situations that create unnecessary disturbance, and gently returning attention to the present moment. These simple actions slowly strengthen the inner foundation of peace. Over time, something remarkable happens. The mind becomes less dependent on external approval or circumstances. It begins to rest within itself. Even when the world becomes noisy, there is a quiet space inside that remains untouched. This is not escape, it is stability. To never lend away inner peace is to live with dignity and clarity. It is to walk through the world without being controlled by it. And in that steady calmness, life becomes not only easier to navigate, but also deeper and more meaningful. Preserve compassion and integrity. Compassion and honesty are essential inner qualities. Giving them away to anger, hatred, or dishonesty weakens the heart and disturbs inner balance. Compassion is one of the most delicate inner qualities, yet it is also one of the strongest. It is not merely a feeling of sympathy toward others, it is a deep understanding that all beings experience struggle, confusion, and change in different forms. When compassion is present, the heart remains open even in difficult situations. But when it is lent away to anger, resentment, or indifference, something essential within begins to harden. Over time, a hardened heart may feel protected, but in truth it becomes distant from peace. In daily life, compassion is often tested. People may act in ways that are unkind, unfair, or hurtful. The immediate reaction of the mind is often to withdraw kindness and replace it with judgment or anger. This reaction feels justified in the moment. It seems like protection. But in reality, when compassion is abandoned in response to harm, the person who loses the most is the one who lets it go. The external situation may remain unchanged, but the inner world becomes heavier. True compassion does not mean accepting wrongdoing or allowing harm to continue. It means seeing clearly without losing inner softness. It is possible to recognize harmful behavior while still understanding that those who act from anger or ignorance are also caught in their own suffering. When this understanding is present, the heart does not collapse into hatred. Instead, it remains steady even while setting necessary boundaries. There is a quiet strength in this kind of compassion. It does not react impulsively. It does not become easily broken by the actions of others. Instead, it observes, understands, and responds with clarity. When compassion is strong, even difficult conversations can be handled without hostility. Even disagreements do not need to turn into conflict. This does not mean avoiding truth, it means expressing truth without losing humanity. When compassion is lent away, the mind slowly begins to divide the world into rigid categories of right and wrong, friend and enemy. This division may feel certain, but it creates inner tension. The more the mind holds on to anger, the more it strengthens its own suffering. Bitterness does not punish others as much as it weighs down the one who carries it. In contrast, compassion releases that burden. It allows the heart to remain light even in the presence of difficulty. There is also compassion toward oneself, which is often forgotten. Many people extend kindness to others but become harsh within when they make mistakes. This internal harshness slowly erodes peace. Self-compassion is the ability to recognize imperfection without self-hatred. It is understanding that growth is gradual and that every human being learns through experience. Without this inward kindness, outer compassion also becomes unstable. To preserve compassion, one must learn to pause before reacting. In that pause, awareness creates space between emotion and response. Within that space, it becomes possible to choose understanding over anger. It becomes possible to respond without losing inner balance. Over time, this practice strengthens the natural warmth of the heart. Compassion also grows when one recognizes shared humanity. Every person, regardless of behavior, carries their own struggles, fears, and conditioning. Seeing this does not excuse harmful actions, but it softens the heart enough to respond wisely instead of reactively. This softness is not weakness, it is clarity without cruelty. In the end, compassion is not something that should be given away casually or withdrawn easily. It is a steady inner quality that must be protected, especially in difficult moments. When it is preserved, the heart remains open yet stable, kind yet wise. And in that balance, life becomes less about division and more about understanding, less about reaction and more about conscious response. Hold firm to patience and self-respect. Patience allows growth without pressure, and self-respect protects you from seeking approval from others or being affected by praise and blame. Patience is a quiet strength that grows in the heart of one who understands that everything unfolds in its own time. It is not passive waiting, nor is it weakness disguised as calmness. It is the deep recognition that forcing life to move faster than its natural rhythm only creates tension and suffering. When patience is present, the mind stops resisting reality, and in that acceptance, a subtle ease begins to appear. But when patience is lent away to frustration and impatience, even small delays begin to feel heavy, and the mind becomes restless without reason. In daily life, impatience often arises when things do not go according to expectation. A goal takes longer than planned, people do not respond as quickly as desired, or progress feels slow and uncertain. In such moments, the mind may begin to complain inwardly, creating pressure that was not originally there. This pressure does not change the situation, it only disturbs the one experiencing it. The more impatience grows, the more clarity fades, and the ability to act wisely becomes clouded. Patience, when protected, creates space for understanding. It allows a person to see that growth is not instant, whether in nature, relationships, or personal development. Just as a seed cannot be rushed into becoming a tree, inner change also requires time, nourishment, and steady care. When this truth is deeply understood, frustration begins to lose its grip. The mind becomes more willing to allow things to unfold without unnecessary resistance. There is also patience with others, which is often tested in close relationships. Every person carries their own habits, conditioning, and pace of understanding. Without patience, there is a tendency to expect others to change according to one's own timeline. This expectation often leads to disappointment and conflict, but when patience is present, there is room for differences. There is space for mistakes, learning, and gradual improvement. This creates harmony rather than pressure. Patience is also closely connected to self-respect. When a person lacks patience, they often become overly reactive, seeking immediate validation or quick results to feel worthy. This can lead to compromising values or rushing decisions just to escape discomfort. But self-respect requires steadiness. It requires the ability to remain aligned with what is right, even when results are not immediate or recognition is delayed. When self-respect is strong, a person does not depend entirely on external approval to feel complete. They understand their own worth not as something given by others, but as something recognized from within. This inner recognition creates stability. Praise does not create dependency, and criticism does not create collapse. Instead, both are seen as temporary expressions that do not define one's true value. Lending away self-respect often happens subtly. It begins when a person repeatedly ignores their own boundaries, accepts disrespect, or compromises deeply held values for acceptance or gain. Over time, this weakens the inner foundation. The more self-respect is neglected, the more unstable the sense of identity becomes. But when it is protected, even in difficult situations, there is a quiet dignity that remains unshaken. Patience and self-respect together form a balanced inner state. Patience prevents impulsive reactions, while self-respect ensures that patience does not turn into self-neglect. One allows time and the other preserves worth. Together they create a way of living that is neither rushed nor weakened, but steady and aware. In this balance, life becomes less about forcing outcomes and more about aligning with truth. The mind learns to trust timing without losing direction. It learns to remain calm without losing clarity. And in this quiet strength, the person discovers that nothing truly valuable is gained through haste, and nothing meaningful is preserved without respect for oneself. Guards silence and inner direction. Wise silence prevents regretful speech and allows understanding to grow, while trusting your inner guidance keeps your life aligned and purposeful. Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness, yet in truth it is one of the richest spaces a person can enter. It is not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness without disturbance. Within silence, thoughts become clearer, emotions settle, and understanding begins to rise naturally. When silence is preserved, it becomes a refuge where the mind can rest and real insight can emerge. But when it is lent away to unnecessary noise, gossip, and careless speech, much of that inner depth is lost. In everyday life, speech flows easily and often without reflection. Words are exchanged quickly, sometimes out of habit, sometimes out of emotion, and sometimes simply to fill empty space. Yet every word carries weight. Once spoken, it cannot be retrieved. A careless statement may create misunderstanding, conflict, or regret that lasts far longer than the moment in which it was spoken. This is why silence holds such value. It creates a pause between feeling and expression, allowing wisdom to enter before action is taken. When silence is not protected, the mind becomes constantly outward-facing. It becomes dependent on external conversations, reactions, and opinions. Over time, this weakens inner observation. A person may speak often but understand little because there is no space left to reflect. Silence, on the other hand, allows experiences to settle. It gives emotions time to soften and thoughts time to clarify. In that clarity, better decisions naturally arise. There is also a deeper kind of silence that exists even while speaking. It is the silence of awareness behind words. When a person speaks from this inner stillness, their words carry meaning and purpose. They are not driven by impulse but by understanding. Such speech does not create unnecessary conflict. Instead, it communicates with care and precision. This is why protecting silence does not mean avoiding speech altogether, but learning to speak from a place of calm rather than reaction. In many situations, silence itself becomes the most powerful response. When faced with unnecessary conflict or emotional disturbance, responding immediately often intensifies the situation. But when silence is maintained, it creates space for tension to dissolve on its own. Not every situation requires verbal engagement. Some moments are best handled by presence rather than words. In such cases, silence becomes strength, not weakness. However, modern life often encourages constant expression. There is pressure to respond quickly, to share opinions instantly, and to fill every moment with communication. In doing so, silence is often undervalued or even avoided. Yet without silence, the mind rarely gets the chance to reset. It becomes overloaded with information and expression, leaving little room for genuine understanding. Protecting silence also means being mindful of unnecessary speech. Not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every opinion needs to be shared. Learning this restraint helps conserve inner energy and maintain clarity. It also improves relationships as speech becomes more thoughtful and less reactive. People begin to listen more deeply and in return understand more fully. There is also a personal dimension to silence that supports inner healing. In quiet moments, unresolved emotions often surface gently, allowing them to be observed rather than suppressed. This process leads to deeper emotional balance. Without silence, these emotions remain buried under constant distraction, never fully understood or released. Ultimately, silence is not emptiness to be filled, but space to be honored. It is a form of inner wealth that allows clarity, wisdom, and peace to grow. When it is preserved, life becomes less noisy within, even if the world outside remains the same. And in that inner quietness, understanding becomes natural and the mind begins to rest in its own depth.